Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today we are exploring the dark alchemy of the fallen angels as we continue to explore the tunnels of Set, or what I call the 22 paths of shadow on the Tree of Death. And we're going to see how to harness the powers of chaos, fear, and even ego to be able to transform our life. And this is really important stuff that gets looked over a lot, especially in the New Age community that's all about, love and light. This is key to be able to transform your life, okay? So that's what we're talking about today. It's going to be really good, really important stuff here. But as always, my friends, before we get started, remember, this is way more than a channel. We are a revolution of consciousness, and you are a part of it. So let's spread this information like fire. Hit like and subscribe. Share this video so we can reach more people. If you want to help out even more, become a member. You get access to a lot of great stuff. You get access to free downloads on inner transformation that I put together on the Tree of Death and alchemy and rituals. I'll be making a PDF download for what we talk about in this video eventually as well. And you get access to our members-only videos. There's tons of them. We're having a members-only video right after this called Jesus Had a Secret Name and It Changes Everything. That's going to be a really good one. Also, if you haven't already, check out my books. And give me a follow on Spotify. Links to all of those things are in the description of this video. And I appreciate the follows on Spotify because we're growing real fast over there. And it's completely free to follow on Spotify. So please do that. Check out the links in the comments. All right. That being said, let's get started, my friends. Okay, so today we are talking about these sentinels on the Tree of Death that exist in the tunnels of Set. And we're going to be dealing with some very interesting energy here with regard to like fallen angels and Nephilim, etc. And we're going to be understanding how to use this dark, chaotic power to transform our lives. So, this is a video in a series. If you haven't seen the other videos, that's okay, that's fine. But let me give you a very, very, very quick rundown of what we're doing here. And if this doesn't make sense to you, just go with it. It'll start to connect as we go forward. You can also watch the other videos in this series as well to make more sense of it as well. Okay, so what we are doing, first of all, is we are working with the Tree of Life and the Tree of Death. And these represent, what these diagrams represent is levels of consciousness and their shadow, okay? The Sephirot and the Qlippoth, or Sephirot and Qlippoth. So, again, levels of consciousness and their shadow forms. The paths between them represent how to reach those levels of consciousness, whereas the shadows of those tunnels are obstacles that you need to pass to be able to ascend as well, all right? So in this series, in previous series, we've already worked with the Tree of Life. In this series, we are concentrating on the Tree of Death. Every path on the Tree of Life is associated with a tarot card, and every tunnel is associated with a shadow version of that tarot card, guarded by a demon called a sentinel. Okay? So, I know that that's a lot to take in, but again, like I said, just go with it. It's all going to connect. It'll all make sense. And remember, this is about exploring the mind in a symbolic way. These symbols that we're using in terms of like angels and demons, etc., are symbolic ways of accessing and communicating and mapping out the unconscious mind, because the unconscious doesn't communicate through language. It communicates through symbols, or a symbolic language, not the kind of language that we're used to, a language of meaning, a language of symbolism, okay? So let us begin, all right? So the very first tunnel that we're starting with today, because we've already discussed several of them, is tunnel or path 27, okay? So path 27, let's talk about this, is related to, let me bring it out here, the Sentinel Partifex. All right. Partifex is the sentinel of Tunnel 72. It connects the Qlippoth of Samael, which is the shadow of Hod, or intellect, and Arab Zarak, or Zarak for short, which is the shadow of Netzach. Okay? I know it sounds like nutsack, but it's not. It's Netzach. Netzach, okay? But people usually say Netzach. But so we have And so what does this really mean, by the way? It means that Hod represents intellect, Netzach represents emotion. And so we have the shadow of intellect and the shadow of emotion, and this path combines the two. And this is a very deadly or difficult tunnel or path because these are already at odds with each other, intellect and emotion. And now we have the shadow of intellect and the shadow of emotion clashing. It's this path right here that comes between. So in terms of planetary symbolism, it connects the shadow of Mercury, which is mercurial poison, and the shadow of Venus, which is Vesper, the evening star. All right? And so it's the path that connects these two right here. It's the poisoned intellect that overthinks and doubts with the shadow of Venus, Vesper, which is the emotional chaos of fear and anxiety, specifically with regard to this path. In terms of tarot, it is the shadow of the Tower card. So this is why you know that this is a very difficult path, because even in the Tree of Life, you have the tarot, the Tower, which is a very difficult card and path to work through. But here it gets even darker. All right. So Partiphax is a sentinel of this tunnel, and Partiphax is a Nephilim. You can see Partiphax, being this towering giant, destroying the city below. And so Partiphax as a Nephilim is, Nephilim are traditionally like the union of angel and human, or you can think of it as like a union of opposites as well. And so we have a union of opposites here, and not just a union of opposites, but a shadowy union of opposites of intellect and emotion, traditionally associated with masculine and feminine. But you don't have to think about it in those terms. You really don't need to. But that's one way to conceptualize it. And so what happens here is together, these two create a destructive feedback loop, all right? Because you have poison intellect and doubt with chaotic emotions, including fear. And so we have thoughts and doubts that feed fear, that creates more thoughts and doubts through anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So you have this feedback loop, this mental earthquake of chaotic emotion and poison intellect, causing self-doubt, anxiety, and fear. It's also the path that connects this is the pillar of death. This is the pillar of chaos, and this is the pillar of death. So we also have the collision of death and chaos here. So when this sentinel blocks your path, what happens is that it feels like your entire world collapses. It feels like your entire world is collapsing. So basically what happens is you start to doubt everything. A lot of self-doubt. You doubt your worth. You doubt your intelligence. You have imposter syndrome. You doubt your talent. You worry about how other people see you. And you think everyone's judging you. You tell yourself you're not good enough. Everyone else has it figured out except you. You're a loser. You're also gripped by anxiety, which affects your body. Fear grips you. And this is the mind and emotions turned against itself, eating itself, and destroying your world, collapsing your world. And this is an inner collapse. When your thoughts and emotions negatively feed into each other and cause that inner collapse. But remember, as we've discussed before, demons and sentinels aren't necessarily evil or not necessarily malicious. They have developed as defense mechanisms. So what it's actually trying to do is protect you. Fear is a protective energy. Like, oh, there's a fucking tiger over there. I'm afraid I'm going to run away and survive. So fear points to danger, but it's not always real. It's sometimes imagined, but fear comes up as imagined or real. So not all fears are useful. Some fears are outdated. So that's what it means when you face these sentinels, is you're telling these sentinels, hey, I understand that you have developed to protect me, but I am the higher self now. I'm not the frightened little child that needs protection. I am the higher self. I have the authority and I have developed the skills to deal with these things. So even though you might have protected me in the past, now this is keeping me small. So that's what you have to understand. This fear, anxiety, self-doubt, it comes from, ultimately, a defense mechanism of protection. It's your psyche's way of saying, be careful, something might go wrong. But of course, these warnings become constant. They can take over. And instead of protecting you, they begin to paralyze you. So let's talk about integrating partifacts. Integrating partifacts, remember, when we're dealing with integration, it means basically having the sentinel become part of our army, or part of our family, or part of our orchestra, depending on the metaphor that you like the best, and using its power to transform and augment our lives rather than having it block our lives. What is that? Oh, by the way, if you guys want to, I keep getting people asking where to get these cards. If you want to know where to get these cards, the link is in my bio. Or not bio, thinking of Instagram. In the description. In the description of this video, there's a link that says the 22 Paths of Shadow. And you can get those there. Okay? So, I'm getting a lot of comments, and I guess people are missing that. All right. So, when we integrate partifacts, it means learning to tell the difference between useful fear and irrational fear, and recognizing that self-doubt doesn't mean you're wrong. It means that you care, right? So it's a reframe. Anxiety doesn't mean you're weak. It means your mind's trying to predict every danger. So absorbing the power of partifacts comes with exposure therapy. That's how you work with the energy of this tunnel. So what is exposure therapy? Exposure therapy means gradually facing the things that you fear so your nervous system can learn that they aren't actually things to be afraid of. I've done this a ton in my life. I used to have a fear of public speaking. I took I took a public speaking class, did open mic nights, became a street performer, did all this stuff. I had a fear of needles. I started piercing myself every day. Don't do that. That's dangerous. But I'm just giving you examples in my life of exposure therapy. When you realize, hey, I used to be terrified of being on stage. Now I'm more comfortable on stage than I am in small group settings. It's like nothing, because I've realized there's nothing to be afraid of. There's no danger there. So exposure therapy is very important when it comes to this kind of stuff. Now, of course, if it becomes unbearable, then you need to get always think about getting a therapist and working with them to work through this stuff, okay? But basically, when you overcome fear through exposure therapy, you bring it into your awareness, and you show your nervous system that the feared situation isn't actually dangerous. And so you reframe your relationship to fear so it doesn't hijack or control you anymore. So that's integration. Fear stops running the show from the shadows and becomes something that you can use instead of or reframe. So I'm nervous means this matters to me. You see the reframe? It's not that I'm nervous because this is scary. I'm nervous because this is important to me. And you do that instead of, oh, I'm nervous, so I must avoid this at all costs. I'm nervous because this is important to me. Also, excitement and anxiety are almost indistinguishable from each other. So you can also reframe it as, oh, I'm excited about this. You know, when you're excited, your heart starts pounding, you start sweating. Oftentimes excitement gets mistaken for anxiety, and so you can reframe it that way. So philosophically speaking, this path of Partifacts is the path of the Übermensch. The Übermensch, or Overman, is a concept developed by Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher, who is basically about destroying all obstacles to be able to overcome limitations. So the Übermensch is one who overcomes themselves. You destroy your limitations instead of letting the imagined limitations control you. So that's Partifacts in its integrated form. As a sentinel, Partifacts destroys your life through inner collapse in this negative feedback loop. But integrated, you gain the destructive power of Partifacts to destroy obstacles in your path, to obliterate obstacles in your path. So let's talk a little bit about some exercises that you can do in order to work on integrating, like real practical exercises you can work to integrate this. Remember, these are just examples to get the ball rolling. You have to think about your specific life and what works for you and what doesn't. But these ideas are just to get the ball rolling. Let me get my notes here. Here are some ideas. So you can start by listing things that make you anxious or afraid. Then instead of avoiding them, approach them gradually. If public speaking terrifies you, start by saying something small in a group chat. Or, you know what might be good too? I haven't tried this before, but like if you have a VR system, there's like VR chat. Talk to people in VR chat if that's a step towards it. If posting your work online gives you anxiety, start by sharing it with a small group and then work your way up online, like maybe just like your close friends list or something, but start to branch out. The important thing about this exposure therapy is that you do it often. Okay, that's really important. So when I first started to like try and get over public speaking, I would do open mic nights like once a month, because back then, for whatever reason, it was really hard to find open mic nights where I was living. And so I would do an open mic. I would be terrified of doing the open mic night. Then I would do it, and afterwards I'd be like, oh, that's not so bad. That wasn't bad at all. That was actually fun. But then since the next one was like a month later, that realization of that wasn't so bad kind of fades, and the fear would start to keep up, take a hold again. So doing it consistently and small, in close intervals is important, because when I really started giving over public speaking is when I started to perform on the streets as a street performer. And then I would perform not just once a week, but at least twice a week. And there was a time when I was performing like five times a week, but you don't need to do it that much. But at least, at the very least, once a week. It would be my suggestion. Of course, always talk to a therapist if you have some extreme cases or you just feel like you need to. But the idea here is that small exposure is a message to your nervous system that, like, hey, this isn't going to kill you. This isn't talking in front of people is not a tiger hiding in the brush that's gonna eat you, right? So that's what you're getting used to here. And so you're teaching your body that fear is just energy that can be guided. And again, so that's one. Let's look to another one, because it's sort of related here, and that's turning fear into excitement. Because your body doesn't actually know the difference between fear and excitement. It uses the same chemistry: racing heart, shortness of breath, sweaty palms. That's adrenaline. The difference is how you interpret it. So the next time anxiety hits, say to yourself, this isn't fear, this is energy. This is excitement. Reframe it as excitement, as anticipation. So you can turn your panic into power here. So that's how you channel the energy of Partifacts as well. You see how you're combining the emotions and intellect into a more positive feedback loop now? Oh, I'm feeling this way, but I'm going to mentally reframe it another way. That can ease my nervous system, that can ease my self-doubt, etc. Here's another great one. Failure as feedback. This is super important. Learn that failure is actually a good thing because it teaches you. Think about if you want to learn to play the guitar, you have to fail 1,000 times before you start succeeding, and your failures are what lead to your success. So reframe failure is not a bad thing, as a good thing. It's a learning experience. It's data that you need. So every time you feel like, oh, something didn't go quite right, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? How can I get better? So reframe it so that it becomes part of your evolution. Transform it into failure from something negative to something positive. Okay? So, by the way, do you see what we're doing here? How we're using these energies, these dark energies that usually block us, but integrating them in a positive way, like fear? You turn it into excitement. You're not getting rid of it, you're transforming it. That's important because energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. So you're not getting rid of it, you're transforming it. That's the difference, because like in old paradigms, it'd just be like, oh, I'm going to pray to God. I'm going to pray to God that I won't be afraid, that I won't be afraid, that I won't be afraid, that won't be afraid. And that might maybe kind of work, but you're just repressing it. You're just repressing it, which can cause more issues down the road. This is about realizing these demons, these sentinels, are not my enemy. They're a part of me. They are me. And they are a protective mechanism that's just like outdated. And so we need to update them. And you go to them with the authority of the higher self and say, hey, I have the tools. I'm not a little, small, scared child anymore. And now by working together, we can both move forward because it is in you. Okay? So you're transforming together. It's transforming and you're transforming because it's a part of you. But you are the whole. You are the higher self. Here's a way to deal with your anxiety by anchoring yourself in the moment. So if anxiety hits you and you're just, the other stuff isn't working and you're just feeling awful, what you want to do is pull your awareness to the present moment, because usually what you're doing is you're getting stuck in your head. The poison of intellect, Samael, self-doubt. And you're getting in that feedback loop of, oh my God, this is going to go wrong, thinking. And then that's causing, increase in heart rate, shortness of breath. And that just increases your anxiety, increases thoughts, blah, 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 bad feedback loop. So what you want to do is pull yourself out of your head and ground yourself in the present moment. And what you can do by this, it's the rule of 5, okay? So you want to look around and name, you can do this in your mind. You don't have to do it out loud, but you can if you want to. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. And by doing this exercise, you're getting out of your head and grounding yourself in the moment, in the right here, right now. And by the way, like when I say something you can taste, I'm not saying like go lick something. Just imagine, if there's like cake sitting on a table, or literally just breathing in, or breathing in and tasting the air. Does the air have a particular taste to it? Or if there are drinks, just like, oh, there could be something, an alcoholic beverage or non-alcoholic, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm just imagining there's a bar there or something. You know what I mean? But that doesn't really matter. The idea here is to ground yourself in the present moment, to get yourself out of your head. And if that's too much, like I know sometimes it can be a lot, like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Ideally, that's what you do. But if you can't, just if you don't have time to do that, and let's say you're with someone, just mention a item in the room. Just go, that's a nice green couch. You could tell it to someone you're with. You could just say it in your head, but you could, maybe that's a nice green couch. Those are nice curtains. The lighting looks nice in here. It's better to do more, but if you can't, try and work your way into conversation where you are acknowledging, you're grounding yourself to the space. You're connecting yourself to the space rather than feeling too detached and too in your head. Okay. This is something I do a lot because I'm very much in my head. And so it's very helpful. Like I said, I don't really care about performing, performing's super easy, but because I use exposure therapy, but if I'm like in a social situation with people I don't know, it's a great exercise to ground yourself and can start a conversation too that way. Okay. So those are ideas of how to integrate partifacts. So let's move on to the next tunnel here. Let's see where we can put this. Let me zoom out. How far? Let's see. Let's put let's see. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's move on. So we're moving on to tunnel 26. Now, tunnel 26 is a very important one. Tunnel 26 is guarded by the sentinel Anonin. Okay, Anonin. So let's take a look at this. Anonin is, you may see where this is going if you're familiar with the tarot, is the shadow of the devil tarot card. So remember, I told you what we're talking about today are very, very, very dark energies, because even in the tarot itself, these are pretty dark. So we're getting darker than dark here with what we're talking about today. So Anonin connects Samael again, which is, remember, the shadow distorted intellect, but with Tigerian or Thagirian. So Tigerian or Thagirian. Thagirian is the shadow of Tiferet or Tifereth. So this represents the corrupted ego. Tiferet basically represents the ego connected to divinity. So the shadow of Tiferet is the corrupted ego. And so this tunnel bridges, again, the shadow of Samael. Planetary-wise is the shadow of Mercury, which is mercurial poison. And it's the shadow of the sun, which is the black sun. All right? So it's this path here. And this is a very, very important one. Very important path, because we're really starting to face the ego here. So we're having a bit of a shift. So let me explain what I mean here. So Anonin represents what happens when the intellect and ego fuse into a system of control. It's the need to control and dominate everything. So if the path of the devil on the tree of life was about recognizing your chains, then Anonin on the tree of death is about worshiping them. You see the chains as power, methods of control, basically like satanic pride, believing that your limited self, your ego, which is what the black sun represents, and you can see the black sun in the background behind Anonin, believing that your ego is the highest force or highest light in the universe. Anonin is also the overdominance of the left hemisphere of the brain, the side that deals in logic, language, categorization, and control. It dissects and measures over the right side of the brain, which is about meaning, connection, and feeling. Because you can see that this is left side, and even ego or self-awareness is associated with the left hemisphere of the brain, okay? Whereas we have emotions and the unconscious associated with the right side of the brain, which would be in Arab Zarak and Gamaliel. So you can see this path is the domination of right hemispheric functions. It's when the left side takes over. And so everything becomes a concept, a category, an object to be controlled. And so instead of just the experience of life, you start to label everything, to put everything into rigid boxes or chains. And so that mentality that chains the self inevitably tries to chain or control others too. So Anonin is also the will to dominate others. It's the mindset that's like, oh, I know better. Everyone else is a fool or a resource or something to step on to get ahead. So when Anonin blocks you, you start seeing people as things, tools, stepping stones, threats. So here we have the corruption of ego and logic, and Thagarian and Samael, the black sun and mercurial poison. It doesn't want to just dominate its own inner world, but the outer one too. And it spreads through hierarchy, control, and manipulation. But once again, remember, Anonin is not pure evil. It's actually a necessary stage in human evolution. It's literally what allowed us to develop self-awareness in the first place. It's the moment when consciousness says, oh, I exist. When you develop self-awareness in the early stages of evolution, you go, oh, I am an individual. I am separate from the environment. But then guess what happens? You go, uh-oh, there are other beings that are not me. Therefore, I must dominate and control them. They are a threat. I must eliminate them. I must destroy them. So we see this like in the Hegelian master-slave dialectic. So Anonin is not evil. It's a necessary stage in development. The problem is that the mind at this stage confuses representation for reality and mistakes the map for the territory. And what I mean by that is it believes that the egoic self is the real self. It's not. It's a tool. You think, oh, I am John Smith from Kentucky who became a doctor and has 2 children. That's your ego self. That's not your true self. But your self-awareness developed to identify with that, even though that's not what you are. It's a tool. That would be like, if you use a spoon to eat and you're like, oh, I am the spoon. No, you're not the spoon. That's silly. So integrating the power of Anonin is about seeing through that illusion. Now, what's really important here is integrating does not mean destroying the ego. That's one of the biggest misconceptions people have in New Age and spirituality and even occultism. The enlightenment means destroy the ego. No, This is bad. You need an ego. If you try and eat soup without a spoon, you're going to have a bad time. Well, I know you could lift the bowl up, but pretend you can't do that, okay? It's going to be very hard to eat. What I mean is that the ego is a tool. You don't want to throw it away. It's super important. It's what allows you to have the concept of individual existence. Without it, you would not be able to function in the world. You'd be like an animal, like an instinctual animal. The ego gives you the ego is what allows you to separate yourself from the environment, realize that you are an I, and plan for the future, consciously pull up memories from the past. That's all. Your ego allows you to do that. So your ego is not bad. When you identify with the ego, that's what's bad. So you don't want ego destruction. You just don't want to identify with the ego. The ego should be in service to your higher self. Remember, you approach the sentinels and you go, hey, I am the higher self. This is how we're going to do things now. And the ego is the servant of the higher self. And Anonin is the shadow of the ego. So this only becomes a problem when the ego thinks it's the ruler instead of the servant. So what Anonin teaches you is to actually harness the power of the ego and the realization that the ego is not your enemy. Because guess what? After this path, what we're going to do is start focusing on strengthening the ego. Yeah, you actually want to strengthen your ego. You want a strong ego. You don't want to identify with the ego. Super important, okay? You don't want to identify with the ego. That's why people are like, oh, working with demons is hard, because it's easy to misunderstand. Because you see, if someone misunderstands, it's going to be an issue. Where you go, oh, so I just can be an egoic, narcissistic, psychopathic asshole, and I'm integrating. No, that's not integration. That's not what we're talking about here. You can use ambition and transform ambition from domination into creation. Instead of stepping on others to get ahead, you can use that same will to improve and build and shape yourself into something greater. Instead of seeking power over people, you seek power within yourself, mastery of yourself rather than over others. So that fuel that was once, this dominating, arrogant, rigid force can become a force that actually helps you to evolve. So integration here with Anonin is about having a healthy ego and having healthy pride, for example. Not an arrogant asshole, but pride. Arrogance says, oh, I'm better than everyone. But for example, healthy pride says, I'm proud of what I built and I'll keep growing. There's nothing wrong with having pride. Isn't it nice when you do something and someone's like, oh, I'm so proud of you? It feels good, right? Well, guess what also feels good? When you're proud of yourself. I'm proud of myself. Let's say you just integrated Partifacts and you went public speaking or did something that was difficult for you. And then you go, I'm proud of myself for doing that. That's a good feeling. Don't let the bullshit corruption of the church's influence make you associate pride with sin. Pride is not sin. Pride out of control, like anything else, becomes bad and becomes, it will transform into arrogance. That's true of everything. We see how even unrestrained love, we've talked about how unrestrained love can turn into a destructive force as you try to smother everything or keeps you. Anyway, I don't want to get it too much off track here, but you get what I'm saying. So when you integrate Anonin, you don't see others as obstacles to your success anymore. You can even see them as collaborators in your evolution. You don't see others as enemies or threats. You see them as co-creators. So This is what happens when your ego becomes aligned instead of inflated. Not the death of the ego, but the transformation of it. You don't want the ego to get out of control. You don't want to destroy it. You want a strong, healthy ego. So, let's talk about some examples of integration. Remember, as always, these are just ideas to get the ball rolling. You can use the ego as a tool. Before starting your day, take a deep breath, remind yourself, and say, ego, you work for me. Then choose an action where your ego can serve your goals. Like speaking with confidence, setting a boundary, finishing a task that you've avoided. Use your higher self, your higher will, to direct your lower self or egoic self. By the way, this is very much in line with the role of the demiurge. The demiurge is similar to this in Gnosticism, particularly Valentinian Gnosticism. In Valentinian Gnosticism, the demiurge can be redeemed. And the demiurge begins to serve the one, the light of the one, and becomes a positive force. That's a great example of Anonin integrated. Okay? In terms of like a Gnostic mythos. So let's see. When you feel an urge to control or manipulate someone, pause and think, what part of me feels powerless right now? Really think about why you're doing that. So you want to flip the dynamic inward. Instead of projecting power outward to dominate, use it inward to stabilize. What you're trying to do is show yourself that true mastery is self-mastery, not being a master over others. Here's one for directed ambition. Think of something that drives you. Success, recognition, achievement, money, whatever. It can be other things as well, gaining knowledge, whatever. Just think of things that you desire, things that drive you without judging. Remember, we're not here to, there's a lot of crazy stuff in the tree of death. We're not here to judge. Just think about it. And think about, how can I pursue this in a way that doesn't just uplift me, but me and others as well? So this helps you start to see others not as threats. And you start to turn that ambition into like creation and even co-creation instead of competition. Another one is to practice healthy pride. Each night, before you go to bed, write down one thing you did well, big or small. It could be like, oh, wow, I just graduated from whatever class I was taking. Or I made the bed today. Big or small, doesn't matter. Write it down. Be proud of yourself. And tell yourself, I'm proud of this because it shows I'm proud of myself because it shows my growth. So this is healthy pride. It's not like, oh, I'm better than others. That's important, right? It's not like, oh, look at me. I just graduated this class, so I'm so much smarter than everyone. See, that's arrogance. You want to train yourself to be able to have healthy pride in a way where you're not feeling shame or guilt, and you feel good about yourself, and you're rewarding yourself. And at the same time, learning not to be arrogant as well. Okay? So, let's see here. Can I fit this? Oh, that glare is horrific. You know what? Let's put these ones away for now, so we have room. All right, that works. All right, so we're moving on to the next tunnel, which is tunnel 25. And tunnel 25, very important one, okay? Very, very important. And it connects Gamaliel with Thagirion. And the sentinel of this tunnel is, if I can pick it up here. Here we go. Saskalim. Saskalim is the sentinel of this tunnel, which is the shadow of temperance. So Saskalim is the fallen angel. Connects Gamaliel, the shadow of Yesod, which represents Yesod is the unconscious. So Gamaliel is the dark side of the unconscious. And we already seen that Thagirion is the shadow of Tiferet, which is the shadow of ego, the corrupted ego. So, in terms of planetary associations, you'll notice that these are very opposite to each other as well, okay? These are very opposites. And this is like lunar subconscious. This is solar conscious. And so the shadow of the moon for Gamaliel, which is Black Moon Lilith, and then we already saw the black sun. So it's going right up the middle here. And we have the sun and the moon, which are opposites, fittingly, for egoic consciousness and the lunar the sun of the consciousness and the lunar aspect of the subconscious. So we saw that Anonin was the shadow of the devil. Saskalim is the shadow of the angel. Now, it comes right after the work of Anonin. Why? Because once you've realized that the ego is a tool, this tunnel is about using those inner pieces to construct it. Okay? So this is super important. We're now moving from realizing the ego is a tool to how can we strengthen the ego? And I know a lot of people are going to think, oh, that sounds so bad, strengthening the ego. It's not. It really isn't. Carl Jung talks about how important it was to build a strong, healthy ego. Don't let New Age guilt become the new Christian guilt. Oh, sex is a sin. I feel so guilty. Or, oh, strengthening the ego, that's not in line with source or whatever. The ego is the servant of the higher self. So you want a strong servant, right? You want a good, it doesn't mean letting it take over. It doesn't mean letting it become king. No. But it means as your emissary, as your prophet, so to speak, the prophet of your higher self, you are God and the ego is your prophet. That's sort of a way that Aleister Crowley put it, which is kind of cool. You want a powerful one. You don't want a little weak one. Think about like creating an avatar in a video game, right? This is a great example. If you create an avatar in a video game, do you want to destroy that avatar? No, that's how you play the game. Do you want to identify with the ego? No, or the avatar? No, you'd be kind of crazy if you did that. You would think the game is real, which is what most people do. But what would you want to do? You would want that avatar to be powerful, right? You want to go level up, gain skills, pick your class, whatever. But you know that's not you, but it's the image of you in the physical world. That's why Jesus said that he is the image of him who is, or the source, or the one in the first apocalypse of James. It also says that in the Bible. I believe, I want to see Paul actually says it in Colossians, I want to say. He says that Jesus is the image of God. And that's what we are. Okay? That's we are. The ego is the servant of the higher self. Anyway, long story short, nothing wrong with a strong ego, just don't identify with it. So, Anonin was about realizing that. Saskalim is about how to start doing it. Because we've started to explore, right? Like up to this point, we've been exploring a lot of different paths. And if we're following along in the tree of life, we're reaching different levels of consciousness as well. And so Saskalim is about taking those pieces and using them. So to take what you've developed, the power you've developed, okay, to be fluid and adaptive. So here's the idea. Temperance on the tree of life is all about harmony. Harmony, balance, and blending. That's what it is on the tree of life. Harmony, balance, and blending, and connection to divinity. But Saskalim is chaos, imbalance, and fragmentation. The fall of the angel into imbalance and chaos. So, these are about swinging wildly to extremes. Whether it's extreme masculine, or extreme feminine, or extreme logic, or extreme emotion, or extreme dominance, or extreme submission. It's the chaotic sentinel of imbalance, the force that makes you over-identify with one side of yourself while rejecting the other. That's how it blocks you, all right? And this can, so with temperance, it's a connection to divinity. With Saskalim, it's a connection to the corrupt ego when it blocks you. And so this can make your ego become conforming and maybe cling to things like rigid gender roles or rigid identities that are of the extremes. It's the illusion that you're one of the extremes. And it can also represent misunderstanding of gender and the other. But the integration of Saskalim is dark alchemy. It's the act of consciously blending and transforming the extremes. Now, what I mean by that is, it's not just, oh, I'm going to blend everything into balance. That's really what temperance does. But what we're doing is we're harnessing the chaotic extremes of Saskalim. Meaning that what this means is you realize that balance isn't always about staying in the middle. It's about knowing when to move to either side. What I mean by that is it, oh, wow. I just hit a button on my, no, stop. Oh, God. What did I do? Hold on. There we go. No. I accidentally made something full screen, and now I don't know how to undo it. How do I undo this? I don't want to just start pushing buttons, or else I may accidentally stop the stream, which I don't want to do. Shoot. That's super annoying. Stop. Undo. I don't even know how I did that. Okay, hopefully I don't push something that's... Ah, yes, I did it. F11. Okay. F11. If something ever goes full screen and you don't know how to get rid of it, F11 apparently. All right, let's get back to what we were talking about. What the hell was I saying? Okay, yeah, it's about knowing how to use extremes, basically. What I mean by that is that not every situation always requires balance. Sometimes you need the extremes. You don't want to always be just like a monk sitting in meditation. That's not how you get things done. So you need the extremes. Saskalim is like, don't let the extremes take over your life and don't identify with one of the extremes, but know how to use them. Sometimes a situation calls for logic, calm, reason, precision. Other times it might need just like raw emotion or intuition or empathy. Like sometimes you might need that masculine fire, and other times you might need that feminine flow. Remember, you don't have to put it in terms of gender. These are terms of energy. We have all these within ourselves. Masculine can be flowy, feminine can be fiery. Doesn't matter. It's just a way of symbolically talking about opposites. I just say it so much because this world is so fucking confused over gender right now, and it's really not that hard for people to. If people would just, read a goddamn book or watch a 10-minute YouTube video from. Anyway, that's beside the point. What Saskalim teaches is that true balance means having access to the extremes, but the wisdom to know when to use each of them. Okay? And here, we're really using integration as almost like playing or experimentation. You experiment with identity to realize that it's very flexible. That's kind of what you're doing here, right? So you realize, okay, the ego is a tool. Now let's see how flexible it is. That's kind of what you're doing here. Let's play with it. Let's explore all the energies and all the extremes within me. Let's shake things up to see what it can do instead of getting locked into one thing. So, there's a lot of ways you can do this by putting yourself in someone else's perspective, or even adopting opposite traits temporarily, not to erase yourself, but to expand your range through experimentation. It's to get you to realize, instead of thinking like, oh, which one am I? Am I left brain? Am I right brain? Am I this or am I that? Realize you can be all of them. That's what it means. So you become this dark alchemist who mixes the extremes. Fire and water. Sun and the moon. But there are times as well that does require synthesis. God, I cannot talk. Synthesis. There are times that do require synthesis and androgyny. But you now have the options available, right? Like I can be extremely one way. I can be extremely the other way. Or I can be a blend of both, depending on the situation and what it calls for. But I'm not rigid and stuck to one thing. I am flexible. You've mastered this dark alchemy. And again, just to be clear, I know I'm probably beating a dead horse here, but just to be clear, this isn't about literal gender. I'm not saying that you have to be physically androgynous or non-binary or extremely feminine presenting or extremely masculine presenting. You can if you want. That's a great way to experiment. But the point is, that's not what I'm not saying that it's psychological. Learning how to explore your inner extremes so that you have everything available to you. You can develop everything that we're talking about and still be extremely feminine presenting, or extremely masculine presenting, or gender fluid or non-binary or androgynous. Doesn't matter how you present yourself. It's the fact that you have access and have developed all the energies within you to be able to use them so that you're fluid and adaptable, and so that the ego doesn't become stuck. It's about exploring the full range and every polarity that's already inside you. So let's talk about some practical exercises for this. Explore extremes. Choose two opposing qualities. It might be logic and emotion, discipline and play, intuition in the sensory world, whatever. Just think of opposites. Pick a pair of opposites, whatever it might be. For one full day, intentionally lean all the way to one side. Of course, don't do anything stupid to ruin your life or whatever, but you know, when you can. The next day, switch to the opposite. Do the opposite the next day. And see how it changes your mood, your perception, your actions, and realize you can do both. This is sort of like, this isn't let me give you an example that I think would help here. Okay, so in chaos magic, here is something that they will do. I'm not saying I recommend this, but it's a good example. So what chaos magicians will do is, let's say they take a dice or a die, right? And for each of the numbers, they assign a certain religion. Like 1, Buddhism, 2, Christianity, 3, Hinduism, 4, Islam, 5, New Age, and on and on and on. Then they'll roll the dice, and whatever they get, oh, I got Christianity. They will fully immerse themselves and live as if they were that religion for a month. And the next month, they'll roll the dice and do another one. And this helps alter perception. Now, I'm not recommending that one does that. I do see where that could be valuable. But it's not something that I recommend. Unless it really, really resonates with you, it's not something I recommend. There's a lot of ways that can go wrong. But this is kind of in a similar vein, but in a much safer and, in my opinion, more productive way. Because some of those religions are awful, and you can get really brainwashed and whatever. But you get the idea. The idea here is to explore your extremes. Next, what you can do is, once you've explored both sides, practice combining them together. You could do that on the third day, let's say. One day, one extreme. The second day, the opposite. The third day, do something that combines them together. Like, for example, if it was logic and emotion, do something like creating art, but with structure. For example, find ways that could involve both. Let both hemispheres engage in an activity. So it's like understanding that, it's the light between the sun and the moon. That's what this is. Here's another way to do this. Think of a real life situation. Think of a real life situation that you're facing, like a decision or a conflict or a conversation that you've been avoiding. And imagine 3 versions of yourself responding. The first version is the pure logician, pure rationalism. You choose the most rational, efficient, fact-based response. Second one is an empathic person. You choose based purely on feeling and connection on how your action will affect others emotionally. And then 3, the alchemist, combining both logic and empathy. See what a balanced response would be. Consider them, consider their outcomes, and realize that you have access to all these things within you. Now, some of them might be very underdeveloped, but that's the whole point here. You want to develop the things that are underdeveloped. Here is an example of what the difference is between, let's say, like a logical response versus an emotional response. So let's say that you have a choice to make, and let's say that you're either going to respond rationally or emotionally. Now, emotionally doesn't necessarily mean, let me give you an example. Let's say that your toilet broke and you hire a plumber. An emotional response doesn't mean crying because your toilet broke. That's not what I'm talking about here. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say the plumber came over, you hired him, he fixes your toilet, he leaves, but the next day it breaks. He did not do a good job. An emotional response, I don't mean like crying because, oh no, my toilet's broken again. That's not what I mean. That's not what this means. So, common misconception. So first of all, what would be a rational response to this? Your toilet broke, you hired a plumber, they fixed it, but the next day it broke again. What would be the rational response? Well, the rational response would be like, okay, this person didn't do a good job. I'm going to go online, look at all the plumbers in my area, find the one with the best reviews, and hire that plumber. It's a very rational response. A feeling-based response doesn't mean you get emotional about it necessarily. It means you take into account how it affects others. Meaning, this would be a feeling response. Oh, you know what? Maybe the plumber was just having a bad day. Maybe he's going through a really rough time. I'm gonna call him and explain what happened and give him another chance. You see the difference? It's not necessarily the most rational choice, but it takes into account that, hey, this is a real living, breathing person. People make mistakes. This isn't just a calculation. And this is super important because right now we live in a world that treats too much, doesn't take into account other people or empathy. It's just like data, money, calculations, analysis, which is important for the whole point of this is sometimes that is important. But you get what I mean, right? Like if you go through one day being logical and another day being more feeling based, and then another day a combination of the two. So, consider how that might work. So another exercise is walking in the shoes of another person. So spend time imagining what it would like to embody the other gender or energy. And that can be masculine or feminine or non-binary, but whatever it is that you don't identify with, imagine what it would really be like to be in that energy. You don't have to think of it in terms of gender either. You could just think of it in terms of attributes. But gender is a helpful way to do that. So think about it. Now, if you really wanted to, you could even spend the day. If you're embarrassed, you could do it in the privacy of your own home of dressing like that particular gender. And you don't have to do that because I know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But here's something I want to say. Why does that make you so uncomfortable? See, that in and of itself should point to you, oh, there's something here. There is an issue here. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. It's more socially acceptable for women to dress like what our society defines as men's clothing, which is completely backwards, by the way. All of this is arbitrary. All of this is just a game of rules that people picked one day, plucked out of the air, and made it all. It's all made up, okay? But you live in it enough, and it starts to feel real. Just as an example of how it's all made up, you know, I was like, oh, blue is for boys and pink is for girls. It used to be the opposite. Yeah, used to be the opposite. Pink was for boys and blue was for girls, because pink was seen like similar to red, like a passionate, like fiery color, and then blue was seen as like watery and passive and soft. But along the way, it got swapped. So these things are super arbitrary. Same thing in Kabbalah. What we would normally think of left brain masculine and right brain feminine. In Kabbalah, it's left brain functions are more associated with feminine, and right brain functions are more associated with masculine. Anyway, the point being here is that it's in our culture today, it is more socially acceptable for women to wear quote unquote men's clothing than it is for men to wear quote unquote women's clothing. Now, why is that? Have you ever really stopped and thought about why that is? And this is why it's important to do these exercises like that, to really start to understand these things. It's because our society, our culture has been conditioned to see it's a patriarchal society. So it sees men as superior to women. And so when a woman dresses in what is associated with male clothing, it's not always accepted, but it's more accepted because it's seen as like stepping up, like a promotion kind of. Whereas when men wear female clothing, it's like a demotion. Like, you know, men laugh at other men. Very, you know, you don't often see women like laughing at a woman because she wore jeans or something. I mean, I'm sure that does happen, but you get what I mean. You sure as hell, you know, as a man show up wearing a dress to like a sports bar, you're probably going to get laughed at. I can bet pretty good sum of money. It's because it's seen as stepping down, as weak, as a social demotion, which is terrible. That's awful. But the reason why I bring this up is because you don't have to do this, but it's become so uncomfortable that ask yourself why it's so uncomfortable. That points to there's a real issue here. There's a real problem. This is a big thing that as individuals and a collective, we need to work through. I'm not saying you gotta swap genders all the time. I'm saying it's an exercise you can do that can be healthy. But you don't have to. And I always want to emphasize that this is not about changing how you present or express yourself on a day-to-day basis. You can do all the things that I've talked about, be extremely balanced, cultivate all the things within you that I have mentioned, while expressing yourself hyper-femme or hyper-masculine or totally androgynous. Androgynous does not matter. Does not matter. Just want to make that really, really clear. Okay, so ultimately though, what I kind of got a little off track in the woods here, but ultimately Saskalim is the shadow of temperance. And so temperance is a balanced, right, let's see. Let me bring this on screen. So temperance represents a balanced union of opposites. Harmony, equilibrium, connected to divinity. Saskalim is about exploring the chaotic swings and the different poles and experimenting with the extremes as a form of dark alchemy, trying out the poles on purpose, and learn to blend by moving through the extremes rather than avoiding them. So remember, it's the shadow of these cards. So the shadow of temperance might be like, oh, I'm just going to walk down the middle path and ignore the extremes. Saskalim says, use the power of extremes to understand them, remain adaptable and fluid, and being able to have within your arsenal everything you need. One extreme, the other extreme, and then having the power to be balanced as well when the situation calls for it. So, as you can see, like last time, we talked about this. These cards complement each other very, very well. Where, oh, that glare, I gotta move the light so it doesn't do that. These complement each other very well. Where we have being able to create yourself by overcoming limitations, harnessing the ego as a tool, and exploring the flexibility of the ego by harnessing the power of extremes. So, I hope that was clear. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope it made sense. If there's anything that is unclear, let me know in the comments. Tell me, and I will check it out. And we will be continuing to explore the tunnels next week. We have more to go. And as always, my friends, remember, this is way more than a channel. This is a revolution of consciousness. So like, subscribe, share. I appreciate it. Become a member if you can. If you want to help out more, you get access to PDF downloads on the Tree of Death and Alchemy and rituals. Eventually, I will be making a PDF download free for members for this, summarizing everything we talked about. You can check out my books, Neogenesis. You can get these cards as well. And follow me on Spotify. Please do. Following on Spotify is free to do. Helps out a lot. Links to all of those things are in the description of this video. Oh, and I almost forgot this week's members only video that we're having in just a few minutes right after this is called The Secret Name of Jesus That Changes Everything. It's going to be really good. So thank you all so much for your support. I appreciate you all. Big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nucelina, Chris Magistus, Eric, Zombie, Ninja, Seaweed, Happy Ninja, Sandy, Solphilia, Jennifer, Christine, Tornado, Sarah, and everyone else. Thank you very much, and ad astra.